Okay, well, it's 2 after, so we're going to go ahead and just kind of get started. Welcome to today's Lunch and Look at Home, Meet the Artist in Residence. I am Jennifer Restauri Dickinson, Director Education here at the Stark Museum of Art, and I'm thrilled to have with me Sarah Douglas, our Artist in Residence. So thank you, Sarah, for joining us today and sharing with you about your work. Today we are going to be talking about Sarah and her work here as the Artist in Residence. We'll have some slides and some videos to show you, as well as some interview. And then what we're hoping to do is spend about 30 to 45 minutes, Sarah and I chatting and talking about the work, showing you some of the incredible things that she did here in our galleries. And then we will open up the floor for questions and answers. What I am going to ask today to help us monitor the program, I am going to ask that if you have questions during the program, you can either put those in the chat box or hold on to those to the end. I also am going to ask you to go ahead and mute your microphone, everyone, but Sarah, please don't mute your microphone. They want to hear from you, certainly. If you'll mute that, that'll just help any of that background noise that could possibly kind of get us off track a little bit, as though we're trying very hard. And we do have a few more people joining in with us. Thank you for coming today. It looks like we're going to have a great group to get going. Well, before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about our Artist in Residence. This is a brand new program that we launched with the Drawing Experience. So we have a special exhibition, the Drawing Experience, on view here at the Stark Museum of Art. That exhibition is on view until March 20th. So a little over a week left to come see that exhibit and see Sarah's work in person. So we're going to be talking about that today. And before we get going, I'm going to ask Sarah to tell us just a little bit about yourself and your background in art.
Well, hi, welcome everyone. My name is Sarah Douglas. That was a great introduction, Jennifer. Sometimes I'm known by Sarah Von Kane when it comes to my work. So I'm an artist that works out of Beaumont, Texas, where I live with my husband, my son, my 2 dogs, and my 2 cats. I graduated from Lamar University in 2014 with a Bachelor of Science in Studio Art Education. And I'm going to graduate in May from Azusa Pacific University with a master's in Modern Art History, Theory, and Criticism. I don't remember a time in my life when I didn't love art and it didn't have some part of my life. Apparently in kindergarten, I claimed that I wanted to be a starving artist when I grew up. So I became an art teacher, which is close enough. Just joking. And I did that for several years and ultimately decided to continue my education and move into the museum field in which I currently work.
Right. And so Sarah's our artist in resident, but she also works in our exhibits and collections department as an exhibits assistant and helps us with our installations and all of the behind the scenes work here at the Art Museum as well. So awesome. Well, Sarah, before we jump into the slides, can you tell, and you told us that you have a background in art, you have a background in art education. Can you tell us a little bit about your art and in your career up until this point, what you've been doing?
Sure thing. So I currently consider myself a mixed media artist with definitely a heavy inclination towards painting. But my career began heavily reliant on drawing, as most artists' careers do. And I began college pursuing that passion. So I was a drawing major. The first few years of art school, you're sort of just berated with every medium imaginable. And quickly, my passion for drawing became essentially a passion for a variety of mediums. And of course, you want to show these works to the public. So there wasn't as many opportunities as there are now in Beaumont to show your work. Now there's several places to do that, but there weren't as many. So you could pretty much participate in the Dishman student shows. You could show at the Beaumont Art League, or you could show at the art studio downtown. And showing at these venues, particularly the art studio, really gave me confidence to explore some more controversial ideas in my work. And once I became serious about my work, I was really primarily working figuratively, and that really continues in my present day work as well, though they have a much more surreal direction than they did initially.
So we'll definitely explore that a little bit. What I'd like to do now is I'm going to transition over. I'm going to share my screen. We have two brief videos. It's going to be about 5 minutes total. That'll introduce you to the drawing experience, which Sarah definitely reacted to in her work, as well as an interview with Sarah that is on view in the exhibit. So give me just a moment to share that screen over for you.
Explore the Stark Museum of Art's special exhibition, The Drawing Experience. Charles Marion Russell's pen and ink drawing, Man Riding Horse, invites visitors to explore why artists draw and the many materials and techniques they use. The exhibition pulls from the museum's permanent collection, including charcoal portraits like this work by William Herbert Dunton, an oil pastel study of a California landscape by Joseph DiGiorgio, and one of Ernest Martin Henning's sketchbooks, which visitors can virtually browse through using a QR code. Visitors have the opportunity to view drawings created with pencil, pen and ink, charcoal, chalk or oil pastel, watercolor, and mixed media, like this 1837 work by Alfred Jacob Miller. The exhibition highlights how artists use drawing as a tool to develop and explore ideas for finished works of art, as seen in the pairs of work by Kenneth Miller Adams, Seth Eastman, and Nikolai Fashion. Southeast Texas artist Sarah Douglas worked as an artist in residence in the exhibition. She was invited to respond to the interactive elements that were closed due to COVID-19. She used a variety of tools and techniques, such as a 21st century version of the camera lucida, as well as light tables to create a new body of work inspired by the elements, themes, and ideas in the museum's collection. Douglas's work has a strong emphasis on the drawn form and explores the way elements of a particular artwork can be taken out of their original context and manipulated. In total, Douglas created a series of 24 contemporary portraits ranging in size from 8.5 by 11 inches to larger than life in just the span of a few weeks. Douglas's residency opens new opportunities for contemporary artists to respond to the museum's collection. The drawing experience is on view at the Stark Museum of Art through Saturday, March 20th, 2021.
So in there is our beautiful building lit up blue earlier this year. Now I do have one more video I'd like to, give me just a second, show you. There we go. So this is an interview Sarah did in response to her residency, and then we'll kind of dive into some slides and some questions.
Hi, my name is Sarah Douglas. I am here in the Drawing Experience exhibition at the Stark Museum of Art, where I recently completed my artist in residency. I have always been interested since I was a very young child in drawing. I remember in kindergarten I wanted to be a starving artist. So I knew that I loved art from a very young age. And when I decided to pursue my degree after high school, I initially pursued it for drawing, and then ultimately ended up in 2014 with my degree in art education. I am now currently pursuing my degree in art history from Azusa Pacific University out of California, and hope to graduate very soon with that degree. When I came into this exhibition, I was very excited because I really think that other people have that relationship with drawing from a very young age, and they would understand this exhibition just from their primal years. I do normally work from photographs, so it was fun to be able to directly transfer them from the iPad to the paper and then sort of manipulate the image with different images. So I initially, when I looked at the collection, looked at portraits, and then I looked at some scenic view paintings, which I found were really interesting to put in the background. I would take the images that I would transfer with the camera lucida, which I could make larger at my own will, and I would then come to the light table and I would do a lot of background information with the light table, which created some interesting depth within the work because I was so limited with the light table and the sizing. So as a viewer, we're all sort of voyeurs into these paintings, and most of the time the subjects are addressing each other within the painting, but I wanted to purposefully make these subjects address the viewer directly, which has a bit of confrontation to that conversation the viewer has between the work and themselves. With the chalk drawings, there is a surreal quality to them, and there is sort of a wholesome quality, which is what I found with the watercolors that the vinyls originated from. So with each of the pieces, you can see that there is this element of peace, but there's also this element of the unknown. Which is something that I particularly like to address in my own work, is that element of the unknown and uncertainty about what's going on. It kind of leaves the viewer to decide their own narrative. I wish people would ask themselves what pre-assumptions they have about the subject matters and why.
So I'll stop our share there. It looks like I had somebody who didn't have sound. Hopefully everyone else did have sound. I didn't have any other responses. I'm sorry for that error. Please make sure your volume is up on that. Now, in just a minute, we're gonna dig in a little bit. Sarah, do you have anything you want to add before we kind of jump in and look at some of the slides of your work?
No, let's do it.
All right, well, let's jump right in. So I'm going to share that screen again. Okay, so there we go. So Sarah, as we kind of dive in, what inspired you in the works that you made for this exhibition and for the artist in residency?
So I'm inspired by a lot of things, but I would say when I went to like start this, I really wanted it to seem natural. So I naturally gravitate towards figurative works. So I started looking at portraiture within the museum's collection, and I made an effort to not limit my search to works that were currently on view in the drawing experience. I wanted to have the experience of reinterpreting a variety of mediums and different parts of the collection, because I felt that that was important. And I also thought that it would be a little bit of a challenge, which I like. So from there, I looked at other works that had imagery I could pull for the background, or just other elements that I could manipulate in the drawings. Growing up in Orange, I knew that I wanted to include some of the iconic Stark Museum imagery, such as the Steuben glass that's on the screen right now, Western themes just in general, and Audubon birds and the rugs. So I did include elements of those in some of my works too. But I wanted to present a fresh perspective on these themes and give them a more contemporary feel, while sort of exploring that viewer's voyeuristic tendency that we have.
All right. And can you tell us a little bit about how long it took you to create the works that you made? Because you made a pretty big body of work, 24 in total.
Yeah, it took roughly a month to complete. I found that the tools that I was tasked with using helped it sped up the process.
Okay, well, and you mentioned the tools, so I want to start by talking about the tools that we're looking at here on the screen now, which is a 21st century version of the camera lucida. This is a tool that artists have used for hundreds of years to recreate images, and we used a 21st century version of this on an iPad. Have you used the camera lucida before?
No, I hadn't. Before the residency, I had no familiarity with camera lucida in its process, but I found it rather quick to adapt to, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the process. I do recommend this tool for anyone that wants to improve their drawing abilities, or if they want to simply focus more on other elements of the drawing, it helps in that.
Right, and so here I've got I just went ahead and grabbed a quick screenshot of that app. It is available on iPad. I think there is an Android version as well. Pretty inexpensive. And as you saw in the video, in real time, you're able to work from those photos. What I'd love to do next, Sarah, is talk a little bit about the works that you created using the camera Lucida. Does that sound good?
Sure, that sounds great.
All right, so here are two of the images, and we saw you actually working on one of these drawings in here. Can you tell me a little bit about what we're looking at and what inspired you, and what you want people to walk away with from these images?
Yeah, so these two images are really great to compare. The one on the left, I took a image that we had from our collection of a Native American girl. Thanks for pulling that up. That wasn't the exact one, but that is
okay. I'm sorry.
girl.
Yeah.
Oh, it's of the same girl. I took an image of her, and I wanted to put her in a more contemporary setting. And so I added the brick wall, and I added the hoodie, and those were all just several source images that I sort of collaged together.
Okay.
The other artwork that was on the right is a comparison of a modern portrait and the Audubon bird that I overlaid on top of it.
And what was the significance in picking that particular Audubon bird?
Well, that was the one that I was drawn to the most, but also that was like a giant raven, and I thought it kind of had an ominous feel to it, and it mentioned earlier that I like uncertainty in my work, so I knew what I was doing with the eyes, so I knew that it had to have a little bit of a strange, unusual feel.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. And then here are two more that you did, and you and I chatted about these a little bit earlier. Can you tell us a little bit more about these?
Yes. So this is a great comparison. So I wanted one of them to look more traditional to the collection. I think that was when I was first starting, the one on the right. When I was first starting, I was sort of like, okay, how am I going to go about this? So I took an image of the artist that you see right there, and I put a different image behind it of a painting. Yes, so thanks for pulling up those images. That's great that you can see that. I'm so awesome. And so I liked both images, and I was like, if I put them together, what kind of story can it tell? Like, what is he thinking about when he is in front of this landscape?
Well, and we chatted earlier, Sarah, about these. So this is a 1919 photo of Charlie Russell, and then a 1940 by Maynard Dixon, both working in the West. Now, Charlie Russell's a Montana boy at heart, right? But I really loved kind of this juxtaposition of these two kind of big figures in Western art together. And I think you're right in thinking about what the stories they can tell. Can you share a little bit about the other drawing on this page? Because I didn't think I realized the references in this, and I didn't have an image reference for this. So if you get a chance to come see the exhibit, you actually can see part of the reference image in the exhibit on this.
You can, yes. So the botanical imagery in the background is actually based on an illustration that we have in the drawing experience. I did manipulate it a little bit. It was very scientific looking, and I wanted it to have a more natural feel. So yeah, I collaged it together in the background to make it appear that way.
So, I mean, these are really complete drawings, and using that camera Lucida tool, do you found that really helpful in trying to create? And is that something that you think you might take forward in your work?
Absolutely. I love the experience of the camera Lucida, and I found myself, even when I was moving on to different parts to interact with, for example, the light box, I found myself returning to the camera Lucida for like different elements because I just loved it so much.
Well, and so you mentioned the light boxes. So we also had these light tables installed in the exhibit. And originally we had hoped that visitors would kind of do exactly what you're doing, collage and create these kind of mixed up drawings. We were kind of drawing off of a early 20th century Dada surrealist exercise called Exquisite Corpse, where artists would combine different pieces of an artwork, and you did this here, and you really started to dig into this theme of identity. And
did.
so I want to show some of these drawings that you did here. Can you tell us a little bit about how identity plays an important role in your work and how we see that here?
Yeah, I mean, life is a continual exploration of identity. So my work is always, in a sense, exploring identity and what it means to be human and to have emotions and to have different interactions. So I wanted to see the works not only interact with the viewer, but I wanted them to interact with each other in a sense. So I deliberately will have subjects engage the viewer. That was mentioned in the video earlier, my interview earlier. And whether that could be direct eye contact or just familiar imagery that triggers something in your brain to say, hey, I've seen that before. I can identify with that. So my work for the show, it really seeks to explore what it means to be contemporarily Western. So I don't just mean rodeos and cows, those typical things that you think of, but I mean like what it means to have the spirit of the West while living in our complex Western society. You know, we confront materialism every day, and we have a complicated national history. Who are we as consumers of culture, and where are we going? That's what I want you to get from my work.
And I think one of the things I want to pull out with these new drawings, they feature men, they feature women, they feature people of all sorts of backgrounds, but you were
Yes.
very specific to include children as well. Can you tell me a little bit about that? You mentioned this to me earlier at one point, and I thought this was really fascinating.
Yes, I did want to include children. I like to include everyone, but children are our future. And I think that comes from my education background. They're going to be our next leaders, and they are a part of our history. And I felt they needed to be pictured in this exhibit. And you don't like see a lot of like children pictured this way, but I wanted them to look empowered.
I think you definitely are successful. There's definitely, to me, an emotion in both of these eyes that really can be overwhelming. I wanted to show this one as well. I think this is one of the ones for me. You talked in the video and earlier about these iconic stark views, and this one to me really sings that. Can you tell a little bit about why these pieces are together when you created this? And
Yeah, so I initially approached this from wanting to use the Steuben glass. So I thought about that concept, like how am I going to use this glass? And I deal with emotion a lot. So I was thinking about how this glass that says America can hold what is truly American, and what's more truly American than Native Americans. So yeah, I really love this painting as well. I think it's been my favorite since I visited as a child this museum. So I knew I wanted to do an artwork based on it. So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. I like this one. Just to me, has always had a real power. And like you said, the Steuben glasses are also so popular. Now, I wanted to show these two. These are two very dynamic. We get a little bit one in color, one that has a little bit more blending work on this. Can you talk a little bit about these? And especially you talk about you want your viewer to feel confronted, and these are full confrontational portraits, right? We're looking straight on.
Yeah, so I really like the comparison of these two. So I did want to work in color pretty much the whole exhibit because I work personally in very bright colors. But I wanted to explore that in the drawing area as well. So that's why you see that one on the left that I did in that beautiful purple color. Purple is significant of royalty, so I wanted it to have a very royal feeling to it. And then you'll see the one on the right. I took a rather popular person. I don't know if anybody recognizes her. She's an actress. So I wanted you to be able to relate to that, but then I put her in front of the pattern of a rug that I borrowed. So.
Okay. And I'm curious because I'm not sure I know who that is, but I'm not very good
That's
on
okay.
actresses either.
That's I like that mystery. I'm like, I don't want to give it all away.
Okay, now I'm gonna be like reverse Google searching later. So
That's okay.
and then there's here just a couple more of these. There's two more of these portraits, and you talk about the work kind of moving in a surreal direction. I think definitely with that one on the right, we're seeing that. And it almost seems now I believe that this also is pulling from a William Herbert Dutton drawing in the exhibit as well. Too, yes.
I love Dutton. Yes.
Well, and Sarah says that, and I have to point out to you that last year Sarah was working on this massive kite project that is behind her currently. So
yeah.
I believe Herbert Dutton as well. And then I wanted to show these figures as well to males. And we were talking earlier about your work being in conversation with each other. So oftentimes we think about how an artwork will speak to the person looking at it or to the person making it. But we also have to think about how artworks communicate with one another in a space, right? And you and I were talking about these two pieces can really be seen as communicating with one another.
Yeah, they can. When you put them next to that, next to each other like that, they look like they're communicating with one another or having a conversation. And these two are a really great example of how I tried to make a more contemporary statement with our collection. So for example, I took a necklace, as you see on the left one, and I added it to a more contemporary figure, somebody that I would imagine that you would see wearing it just on the street. And on the right-hand side, it's harder to tell what I did, but the bird on his neck is actually from a drawing in the drawing exhibit. And I turned it into a tattoo, kind of that idea of modern art compared to the past.
Right. And so you just mentioned that, and I want to kind of flip over just so you can see here, guys. So in both these drawings here, we can see the sketches from John Young Hunter. And here, just if you didn't see it, there is that bird kind of crawling up, flying up his neck there. So very nice, Sarah.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah,
I did use some of the images several times.
Well, I mean, and I think that's, I think artists definitely return to ideas. I think that's one of the things that we discuss in the exhibit. Why do artists draw? They draw to get out ideas. They draw to work through ideas. And I think imagery can definitely resonate with people. Sarah, I am curious to know more about what was the favorite piece that you created in the residency. And you told me that this was your favorite piece. And I'd love for you to share with people why this was your favorite piece.
So this is one of my favorite pieces. I had a few that I really favored. And this is not the most beautiful piece from the exhibition, but I think it was the one that had the most significance to me. So it's a little square drawing we see, and I've actually titled this drawing Home of the Free. Though they don't have titles in the exhibition, that's what this title for this is. And it was based on Victor Higgins' painting called Adobe Doorway. And it depicts an interior with an open doorway and a window in which you see a partial face peering in. And that face is a photograph by Edward Curtis entitled Marcus. It has a longer title, but I just like to call it Marcus. And I actually use that in a chalk drawing too, that drawing of Marcus. And so this Native American gentleman, Marcus, he peers in the window of this home, which I have representing America. You can see that through the inclusion of the flag. And you can interpret this how you will, but to me, this piece offers kind of a small commentary on the walls that our country builds and who they exclude and who they include, and just kind of a conversation starter.
Now, in contrast, when I asked you what were the most challenging pieces, you were very clear with me that these chalk drawings were the hardest thing that you did. And I'm going to flip through just real quick to show people. So these are extremely large wall-sized drawings, approximately like 10 feet by 6 feet wide. And then there's what is that wall? I think he's a 10 foot, almost 10 foot by like 8 feet. Can you tell us a little bit about why these were the most challenging?
Well, they were the most challenging initially because of the scale. They were the largest. But I'm not afraid of size. I am not that keen on using chalk pastels in my work. And so when I saw the amount of chalk pastels I was going to have to use, I knew that there would be a little bit of a fight between me and the artwork. And also, what you don't know, or maybe you do, is that I was using sidewalk chalk for this. So rather than using chalk pastels, I used sidewalk chalk. So it made everything pastel. And my personal work is not very pastel, but I had to kind of adapt my ideas around the idea that these were going to be pastel color.
Right, so that
drawing.
palette that we're seeing here really impacted. And when we designed this, you were responding to some pre-existing prompts. When we designed this, our thought had been that sidewalk chalk specifically, was something that people had regular access to, would probably have had experience with in some way, shape, or form, and might feel comfortable with. Was there anything about working with it that surprised you? Would you try it again, or you feel pretty confident in that this is not your medium?
There were definitely, I found some unique solutions to problems that I had while doing this. And I'm not going to throw chalk pastels out the window, but it was a learning curve a little bit.
Well, I wanted to dig into just a little one of these, and I'm sorry, these images are a little grainier than they were on my screen originally, so I apologize for that. These are 2 drawings that you did on these chalk pastel walls, and they are sourced. This prompt was finish this, and the idea was that we put these huge vinyls up for you to finish, and it came from this drawing by artist Isla McAfee. Now, Isla McAfee is one of the women artists that we were able to feature in our collection in this exhibit. And I know I, for one, was really excited to have a female artist in residence responding to this. Can you tell us a little bit about these works? Did you respond strongly to this, and kind of what you want people to walk away with?
So when I initially started to approach the chalk drawings, I went in more of an emotional direction. Like I do in my personal work, I wanted to express emotion. So these 2 images are actually depicting hope in a sense. Now, they're a little strange, but the one on the left, you see the girl being essentially taken out of the water by a horse. So it has that illusion that she's maybe been saved from drowning. That's kind of my idea behind that one. And then the one on the right, you see the horse that is encircled with the rainbow, which is happiness or joy. So that has that hope feeling to me. And it's essentially like a salvation from the flames.
Thank you, Sarah. Now I want to, so this is just kind of an installation shot where you can see that video in there. What I'd like to do, I'm going to stop our screen share and kind of pull us back up. I've got you highlighted, and then I'm going to highlight me too. There we go. Perfect. So Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about what was the biggest thing you learned about yourself in this process?
Well, I learned that I have more of a connection to the West than I initially thought. And that through all of us really runs this desire for new frontiers and exploration of our own history. And I was also amazed at the breadth and width of the Stark Foundation's collection that had yet to be seen. I just wasn't aware before I came, like how much work we have. So everyone should definitely come and visit the museum and to see new works that go up and new exhibitions.
Absolutely. And was there anything about, and I know you mentioned this a little bit, but I can give you a chance, a little more time to dig in a little bit, about the museum, the artwork specifically, things that surprised you, because you were engaging with our collection as an employee already, and then this opportunity for an artist in residence. Things that shaped you. I was trying to jot down a note to myself. I love this idea of like frontiers of ourself, right?
Right, yes.
So, what do you want people when they see your work here at the museum? Like I said, they've got a little over a week to come back and see it. If they haven't had a chance to see it, what do you want them to walk away with? Feeling or thinking or?
Them to challenge themselves to look at art in a new way,
Mhm.
to see themselves and maybe their history in the work, and to ask themselves who they are and what defines them.
Right. And what's next for you after this residency? So the show closes, and I asked you this earlier, what happens to this work? The show closes next week. So what happens next?
More exhibitions happen, hopefully, of the work, and I have to be honest, some of the drawings are going to receive some paint because I was itching to paint these drawings the whole time, and just I wanted to keep it true to the drawing experience, so
Well,
they're
I'm
going to receive
glad
paint.
that you did. And I will say that one of the things I know my staff talks a lot about are the power of preliminary drawings, of figuring out those ideas and laying those things. So I would say I'm going to encourage you to use those as preliminary drawings and to save those and move forward, because I think there definitely is a lot to be said for that. And I know we need to document that here from our side too. Sarah and I were chatting, this residency and the responses really drew from some art historical practices, and also as art educators, this is a lesson that we talk to students about appropriating and mixing things up and creating new meanings from existing works. So I'm just really thankful that you were willing to share with us today and get a chance to put a face behind this incredible work, a body of work here at the museum that you've created. What I'd like to do now is open up the floor for a chance for you to ask questions that you may have for Sarah. If you'd like, just unmute yourself. I'd love for you to introduce yourself, say who you are, and share your question if you have some. If you're not comfortable using that microphone function, please feel free to use the chat. I am monitoring that as well.
Hi, Sarah. This is Rebecca. I work here at the museum. Of course, you love the art at our museum, but I'm wondering what other area or any museum, what are some of your favorite museums to visit to also seek inspiration?
My favorite museum in Houston is the Menil Collection. Every time I go, I am blown away. And so I highly recommend going there. I also like the Contemporary Art Museum of Houston and the Museum of Fine Arts, of course. And they have really great exhibitions, like special exhibitions, if you just keep an eye out for it. Like I saw the Mark Rothko retrospective, which was really great. Yeah. I hope I answered you. Oh, and of course, the MoMA when I went to New York.
Yeah.
Sarah, we've got a question in the chat. Wendy Ledbetter would like to know, who are the artists that inspire you?
Oh man, Egon Schiele is one of them. I really like all of the Vienna secessionists. I also like Mark Rothko. I mentioned that just a second ago. More recent artists, Marilyn Mentor is another artist that I really appreciate and love. I think there's just so many. There's just so many. Jasper Johns. Really, I mean.
I know at one point you mentioned Jenny Saville.
Helen Frankenthaler.
Yeah. Jenny
Helen
Saville at one point. Yeah.
Yeah, Jenny Saville. Yes. Man, they're just so, everything's awesome. But those would be probably my main ones.
Right. And please don't be shy. We know you might have some questions. Please feel free to unmute and ask any questions that you might have, or if there's specific works that you saw today that you might have more questions about.
Hey, I'm Ensign Stark. I have a question.
Okay.
How do you overcome an artist block?
That's a great question. Because I actually, this has been a recent thing that I've dealt with, because I went through a period of months where I really just was stuck. You just have to make art. And you have to force yourself to do it sometimes, just because it's good practice. And you don't have to show that art if it's not like a work that you're really particularly proud of, but you just have to continue to make something. And what I do a lot of times is, if I'm not it, because I consider myself a mixed media artist, if I'm not in the mood to do a painting, then I'm going to at least do something creative. So I have a hobby, like I make jewelry, and I also sew a little bit. So as long as I'm like putting some creative energy into something, then you're going to get past that block and you'll get inspiration. And when it hits, it hits. And you'll know.
Thank you, Anson. That was a great question. Now, Sarah, I know I have a couple of high school teachers who joined us here today.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give to students who are interested in careers in museums or interested in careers in art, and how to pursue?
I would first say research what options are out there, because there's a lot more than you think. And then I would say talk to, if you have a guidance counselor, talk to them about schools. And if you don't know, you can ask someone at a museum. Like, you could come to the Stark Museum and ask someone, hey, like, what school did you go to? And they'll answer you and tell you more about it. And the internet is powerful. So just look at what's out there, because there's a lot of options for the museum field.
Thanks. I know that our teachers will appreciate that one for sure. Well, do we have any more questions for
Sure.
Sarah today? Sarah
Hi.
May? Yes, hi.
Great presentation. Sarah, can you talk a little bit more about working directly from objects as opposed to working from photographs of objects, and the experience of actually, using a work of art?
Well, how do I, it's a different experience, but I think I sort of turned everything into photographs. So I, just because that's naturally how I work, I would take photos myself with my cell phone camera a lot of times, and that's just how my brain works. So
So it's a memory
it's
aid.
a lot better than working from photographs, though, to see it in real life. You get so much more detail.
Mm-hmm. Did you find yourself referencing back and forth? Like, there are a couple of drawings, and you and I talked about this. Sarah used drawings that were in the exhibit, as well as works that were on view in the permanent collection, and then some that weren't. So you were referencing photos there. But did you find yourself going back to the original works for those details, or to kind of think through?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you see so much more detail in person. I mean, that's why you should go to museums, is to see the artwork in person, because it's a totally different experience. And scale is really big when it comes to that, because you can't really understand the scale of an artwork when you're looking at it on a computer. When you're standing in front of it, it's a whole different thing.
Right. Well, and I definitely think that speaks to your work too. I know we were chatting earlier, and Sarah, the really large drawing Sarah did, we were just talking about the power of that drawing just on the sheer scale of it. You're standing in front of it and it's larger than life. And so, but I think about maybe that John Young Hunter with the birds. I mean, that's a very, very small sketch that you're working from. So let's see here. Sarah, Wendy Ledbetter had a question, and another one. She wanted to know if you ever paint on plein air.
I have done that before a few times, and I enjoy that. I really like to watercolor when I'm doing that. I primarily work with acrylic, normally in my personal work. I used to oil paint, but I'm very impatient. So I have done plein air, and one of my very close friends, she does that religiously, and so it's enjoyable. I've heard there's a group recently actually that's starting here in the area for plein air, so I need to check that out a little bit more.
That's exciting. I have not heard about that, Sarah. So
Yeah,
I'll
you
get the
should look
details
into
on
it.
that
There
from
is.
you. So for sure. Karen Leonard has asked if there were any pieces that inspired you but never made it into a finished piece. And I'm going to build on that. Are there concepts or ideas that you're going to take into your work moving forward?
I mean, like I said, I'm inspired by everything. I'm inspired by everyday life. So I can't pinpoint one. But there were several that I just, let me backtrack a little bit. In the hallway for the exhibition, there's like a series of portraits. I was so inspired by all of those, but I felt like when I tried to translate that and make it my own, it wasn't far enough from the original to include. So there is a sketch floating in the atmosphere of one of those, but it didn't make it. It didn't make it.
Do you think you'll continue to explore concepts of the West in your work?
I do. I have been surprised by some of my creative impulses after doing this. So yeah, I think I will.
I think that that's a great outcome there, as well as we continue as the Stark Museum of Art works to build relationships with community artists and to build out, our space as a making space. I love the idea of inviting artists in and this exercise of kind of rethinking and seeing where that artwork can take you and those ideas. Any last questions? We've got about 10 minutes left today. There's no rush and no hard and fast. We must be 1 hour exact, but I do want to respect your time today. Any other questions for Sarah burning questions you might have before we say goodbye for the afternoon?
I'd like to thank all of you for doing this. This is very special. And Sarah, we have spent a lot of time in Salida, Colorado, and there is a plethora of fine artists there. Have you ever been to that particular area? I would recommend it if you can get there.
I haven't. I have not been to Colorado, unfortunately. A place that I did go that I found really inspiring is Marfa, Texas. If you've never been there, I would recommend going there. It's a very peaceful vacation and very art filled. So
the hospital, even in Salida, has displays on the floors and in the downstairs entryways that feature the local artists. And when we've gone up there every year, not in 2020 because of the pandemic, but well, we did go in 2020 because it was before the pandemic. We didn't go this year in February, but even the hospital displays the artwork of the area, and we consider it something that is very special and not perhaps well known, but it certainly has been enriching to us because we've gone there every year since '92. So sometime just keep Salida, Colorado on your bucket list.
I will for sure. I'm definitely one of those people that when I go on vacation, I visit all the museums. So I can't lie, I have been on a vacation specifically to visit museums. So yeah, I will definitely keep that in the back of my mind. Thank you.
And thank you for all of this. I think it's really, really enriching for our community. We love the museum, and there's so many adjunct things for us to learn.
Thank you, Gail, and thanks for supporting this. Well, Sarah, thank you for taking the time today to share with us about your experience and the art that you've made. And thank you for joining us today. I hope that this has been enlightening and a chance maybe it inspired you. I know certainly after this, I feel like I need to go back and spend a little bit more time in the galleries and see some of this work a little bit more up close and personal one more time before it is gone. The museum, the drawing experience is open until Saturday, March 20th. So please do come by and see the drawing experience before it goes, and Sarah's work as well. And again, just thank you, and y'all have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.